Good morning, everyone. The New Jersey State Police is our most visible symbol of law enforcement in New Jersey and is one of the nation's premier law enforcement agencies. Its prominence has grown in part due to the individuals who have been given the significant responsibility of leading an organization charged with safeguarding our state and our citizens. Today, with some measure of regret, but with a great deal of pride, I'm announcing the departure of Colonel Rick Fuentes, who has served as our 14th Superintendent of the New Jersey State Police for the past 14 years. He submitted his retirement notice with my office this morning, and it will be effective on November 1st. I see Mrs. Fuentes in the audience, who I've had the opportunity to spend a good amount of time with, probably more than she would have wanted to, over the last 14 years, both as U.S. Attorney and as Governor. And I know that the service that Rick has provided to the people of this state would not have been possible without her support during both times that were joyous and times that were very difficult. And so I thank you for being here, and I thank you for the friendship you've shown to me over all of these years. Rick has had a distinguished career beginning 39 years ago. In January of 1978, as a member of the 93A Trooper class. He has served the Division of State Police with integrity, with commitment and professionalism throughout his assignments, including as a general road duty trooper in central and southern New Jersey, as an instructor in Seagirt, as supervisor with the FBI, New Jersey State Police, JTTF, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, narcotics units, and the street gang unit, and as chief of the Intelligence Bureau, overseeing 9 units within the intelligence section. He has been recognized by the United States Department of Justice, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and in 1993 was a co-recipient of the New Jersey State Trooper of the Year Award. I want to thank Rick for serving our state with honor and for his strong leadership through the many challenges we faced. But more importantly, on a personal note, there are only a few people that I've worked with during my entire career as U.S. Attorney and as Governor. Rick Fuentes is one of them. And I remember when he was made Colonel of the State and Superintendent of the State Police, when I was U.S. Attorney. It was an extraordinary relief, given some of the tumult that was going on in the State Police at that time, to have someone of Rick's character and his strength and his leadership ability. And we began a partnership then as federal and state law enforcement to deal with the aftermath of September 11th, the growing terrorism risks in our state, and a number of other problems where the state police stepped forward with federal law enforcement, the extraordinary crime issues that were occurring back then in Camden, and any number of things that I could raise over that period of time. So that when I became governor, it was a relief to me that Rick was here. It was something that I looked forward to in terms of working with him in an entirely different way than I did when I was U.S. Attorney. And it has been an honor for me to have him stand with me these last 8 years. Lastly, there is no one who worked better or more effectively in the lead up and the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy than Rick Fuentes. And he led the state police in a way that made that awful circumstance somewhat more bearable for the people of our state. And the overwhelming presence of the men and women of New Jersey State Police across our state in the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy, despite so many of them having suffered personal loss of their own, was an extraordinary symbol. And I know that they would not have been able to do that if it wasn't for the leadership that Rick provided and the faith and confidence that the men and women who wear this very special uniform had in their leader. And so it's a great personal loss for me, but one that I am confident will be good for the Fuentes family. And so I thank Rick very, very much for his service, for his friendship, and his partnership over the years. And I know that I speak for Attorney General Perino as well for the ways that we have interacted with Rick over the years, both in Chris's capacity as Chief Counsel to the Governor and now as State Attorney General. So at the same time, I am announcing that Lieutenant Colonel Patrick Callahan will be appointed today as Superintendent of the New Jersey State Police. I want to take a moment to welcome Pat's family who's here today in the first row. When I sat and met with Pat and we discussed the possibility of him being appointed the next superintendent of state police, we had a wonderful conversation in many different respects about his life, his growing up in this state, but most particularly, and I mean no offense to the rest of the family that's here, but we spent a good amount of time on his dad, who is a retired state police major who served as chief of staff for Colonel Pagano. And as a father, I can certainly relate, at least in some small way, to the extraordinary pride you must feel today that someone like you has dedicated so much of your life to service in the state police, sits here today and knows that as parents we never know whether we're doing the right things. We try. Some pretty good evidence of the fact that you set an extraordinary example for your son, who followed in your footsteps to the state police and now ascends to the highest post that the state police can offer. Pat's career began in 1995, first as a member of the 115th Trooper class, then as a General Road Trooper before moving on to the Investigations Office. From there, he served in a variety of positions within the Budget Operations Bureau, the Grants Administration Bureau, Facilities and Finance Bureau. He also served as the Bureau Chief of the Recovery Bureau in the aftermath of Superstorm Sandy, which is where I had my initial interactions with him on a personal level, working in coordination with our Office of Recovery and Rebuilding and multiple, and I mean multiple, state and federal agencies to develop and implement the long-term recovery effort strategies that the state police have been so integrally involved in. Pat then became commanding officer of the Emergency Management Section and the Assistant State Director of the Office of Emergency Management, where he chaired the Command and Control Subcommittee for Super Bowl 48, another time when I had the opportunity to interact with Pat in his official capacity. Most recently, he has been the Deputy Superintendent of Operations, supervising and directing the operational activities of the 1,800 enlisted members assigned to the field operations, as well as the operational duties and responsibilities of the Traffic and Public Safety Office, the Victim Securities Unit, the Fatal Accident Investigation Unit, the Highway Traffic Safety Unit, and the Criminal Investigation Office within field operations. In other words, there isn't a part of the New Jersey State Police that Pat has not had the opportunity to work in and then lead. That, when added to his role as a important assistant to his father during his time when his father was in the state police, and I heard a number of stories when I talked to Pat about riding in his father's troop car as a young person, and his father showing him the example of what it means to be a New Jersey State Trooper, leads me to say we're indeed fortunate to have Lieutenant Colonel Callahan assume the role of superintendent. He is an accomplished law enforcement professional who will continue in the tradition of excellence that's been established by Rick Fuentes. And lastly, I will tell you that the New Jersey State Police is a proud and loud organization. And as the rumor has circulated around a bit that Colonel Fuentes might be deciding whether or not to continue in that role, I have heard from many rank and file members of the state police who have uniformly said to me that Pat is the right man for the job. The people that you're going to lead need to respect their leader. And I have not heard a bad word over the course of my 8 years as governor, but certainly in the last month or so, when there was some feeling around that there might be the need to select a new superintendent, about Pat. And that's also will be extraordinarily important, both to me and to the new governor. You want someone leading the state police who has the trust and confidence of the men and women who put their lives on the line every day on the streets of our state. And Pat has that. So I want to introduce for a few remarks first Colonel Fuentes, and then the new superintendent, and then I'll come back to take any questions you might have. So first, Colonel, thank you for your service.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, and Governor, thank you for, on behalf of my wife and I, for the extraordinary opportunity of being able to lead the state police during your term, during your administration. And it's been an honor to serve alongside the thousands of men and women of the Division of State Police who really put their lives and their personal time above themselves to serve the public safety needs of the state. You thanked my wife, and I need to thank her for all those canceled vacations, the holidays, the working holidays that, Linda, you're sorely about to experience, and for being alongside me during that time. Lastly, I would sum up my 40 years probably in 2 sentences. There were days and there were times when I wanted to go home from work early. There was never a single day I can remember when I didn't want to come to work. So, Governor, congratulations on appointing Pat. He's an excellent, excellent choice. He has the state police in his DNA as a result of his father and the great legacy of his father. He has a great family to back him up. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Colonel. Sure.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I would echo the Colonel's remarks in thanking the Governor for the trust and confidence that he has in me to lead an organization that I've, ever since I can remember, wanted to just be a part of. I've always considered myself a Jersey trooper, regardless of what I've sewn on my sleeves or pinned on my shoulders. I always introduce myself when people ask, what do you do for a living? I say I'm a Jersey State Trooper. And that will never change, just as it hasn't changed for my dad, who, although a retired major, says I was a Jersey Trooper. So I am certainly honored, privileged, and extremely humbled to be appointed by the Governor to this position. And I as well would like to thank my wife. I've known her since I was 13. We were high school sweethearts and we've been married for almost 28 years. And we have 4 kids, one of which is here today. He's 6'8". When you see him stand, you'll know who he is. And certainly my sincere gratitude to my mother and father. As I say, they didn't tell me how to live. They lived and let me watch them do it. So thanks again, Governor. It's a humbling experience, and I look forward to serving the citizens in this role. Thank you.
Congratulations. All right, you guys have to stand up for this. Go sit down. Because I don't know what they're going to ask me, so you guys just go ahead and feel free to sit down. All right, questions? Yeah.
Governor, I think I asked you last week or something like not that long ago about whether or not you spoke with Donald Trump, President Trump, about whether Colonel Fuentes would make a good head of DEA. Has that changed? Have you had conversations?
It's not changed. I have not spoken to the president.
Do you think he would make a good head of DEA?
Rick Fuentes would be good at anything that he put his mind to. And if, in fact, that were to be the president's decision, especially given the problems that are facing our country right now, which I am, intimately involved in, regarding drug overdoses and deaths across our country, we need a strong, decisive leader of the DEA. And if that were the president's choice, the president, in my view, couldn't make a better choice. But I have not spoken directly to the president, no. Other questions? Yeah, Dustin.
Do you have any reaction to, I assume that you either read or saw the Washington Post 60 Minutes report on the DEA and its involvement in the opioid crisis?
Yeah, well, my reaction is that it's pretty extraordinary that members of Congress could vote for a law like that without a roll call vote. They voted both in the House and the Senate by unanimous consent. And then a Republican Congress and a Democratic president then signed it. It's pretty extraordinary. Looks to me like the fix was in when you have something like that. So I think it raises the stakes with what the president needs to do. I think it lays out some of the things that Congress needs to do, and we'll also address some of that in our final report as well.
Do you think there needs to be a higher level of accountability in the wake of this?
Well, I think there needs to be a level of accountability. Forget a higher level of accountability. How about a level of accountability? I mean, that's just unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable, Dustin, and I think the president feels exactly the same way, and I think his comments after that and his withdrawal of Congressman Marino as the proposed drug czar is an indication that the president feels exactly the same way. And so now it's about not just picking a new drug czar, because to me, that's just a small part of it. This is about changing the attitude of the American people and its leaders towards these drugs. We consume in this country 85% of the world's opioids. 85% of all the opioids consumed in the world are consumed in the United States. It's just wrong. And we need to give all our law enforcement agencies every tool they need to be able to help to interdict and prevent people's addiction. And when you can't do that, then we need to make every tool available to deal with people's addiction and get them treatment. These things are not mutually exclusive. There's three legs to that stool, and all three legs have to be strong. My position all along has been we've spent more time and money on interdiction than we have on treatment and prevention, and we need to make sure that all three legs of the stool are even. And so hopefully this will lead to an even more intense discussion, Dustin, about this issue, and I'm obviously prepared to continue to participate in it. Yeah, Sal.
Governor, you mentioned Representative Marino is no longer under consideration for judge. Would you be interested in that role?
No.
White House approached you about it?
I'm not interested in the role.
Just on the 60 Minutes report, what was your kind of gut? You said that the fix is in, but what was your kind of gut reaction when you watched that?
The fix is in. I told you exactly what I felt like. You know, something that's that important to pass by unanimous consent, no objection from the 100 members of the Senate, no objection from the 435 members of the House. Okay, so then you can say, well, they were controlled by Republicans. They set up the consent list. Democrats can always object, and they didn't. And then you have the Democratic president sign it without ceremony, without any comment, and just signed it. That's what made me think the fix is in. And I think the president has made clear that he feels exactly the same way and is angered by it. And, you know, I don't know how many more deaths have occurred because of the passage of that law. Nobody does. But we know there have been more than there should have been. And that's just unacceptable, Matt. And so, you know, I think it was very good work, appears to have been done by the Post and by 60 Minutes, and that's a good thing. And now we, you know, can go about trying to fix those problems because they need to be fixed. And I do love all the people in Congress now who voted by unanimous consent for it, calling for the repeal of the law. You asked me why I don't want to be in Congress? Like, yeah, there's another good example. Wasn't my responsibility that time, but I'd like to take responsibility this time. You know, when you're governor, you have responsibility every day. Those are the kind of jobs I like. I don't like jobs where you don't. Other questions for maybe anything? Yeah.
There seems to be some kind of compromise now in the Congress to restore the CSRs to help ameliorate the impact on the insurance companies. What do you think of this effort? And I guess the president this morning tweeted that he's no longer in favor of the actual compromise.
Listen, I from what I read about it, so I'll give you that qualifier as usual. From what I read about it, it seems to make sense. I think the problem with the subsidies all along was that they were extra legal. They had not been authorized by Congress under the statute. And I think my understanding of the president's initial motivation for getting rid of them was that make Congress authorize these things. Let's not be doing it in an extra legal way. Now, whether what the president is doing now is engaging in some further negotiation of other things he might want in the bill or something like that, I don't know. You'd have to ask the White House about that. But in the end, I think that when you take things out of the executive realm and force cooperation between the executive and legislative branch, that's usually a good thing. And so in this instance, my initial reaction is I think what Senators Alexander and Murray are proposing seems good. I'll want to see all the details about it as usual, but my initial reaction is it seems good. And my initial guess on what the president is doing is looking for a little bit more in the deal, whatever that may be. And that's my experience over the years with President Trump, and my guess is that's what he's doing.
Is it too late to allow the insurance companies in Jersey to refigure premiums for 2018?
Well, I think the open enrollment period is like for this month, right? So I think there's still some time, maybe 13 days. So it depends on what Congress is going to do, what kind of indications the president sends, and all the rest of that. So I think that's interesting. I also find it extraordinarily interesting that Horizon Blue Cross is, you know, proposing 20-some+ % increases in their Obamacare policies while they're sitting on, you know, $2.8 billion in reserves, most of which their policies, at least with the state, all they are, and it's a large part of their business, as you know, with the state and localities, they don't need reserves because they're not insurers, they're administrators. We self-insure. We're on the risk. So if there are more to be paid than we're projected, the state pays it. There's no risk at all to Horizon on that. So, it's once again, Horizon being Horizon, and I'm sure the speaker is proud of the fact that he defended that. Other questions on anything else? All right, good. Quiet today. I will. I look forward to Pat's beginning work as the superintendent on November 1st. And I want to emphasize this too. I meant to say this in my opening remarks. The position of superintendent of state police has never been a political one. Shouldn't be. It's too important a position. And there's really not partisanship, in my view, in terms of the responsibilities of the superintendent of the state police. Should be based upon, qualifications and not anything political at all. The evidence of that is that I maintained the superintendent of the state police, who was appointed by Jim McGreevey and maintained in office by Dick Cody and John Corzine. There was never a moment's thought in my mind of replacing Rick Fuentes because he had been appointed by a Democratic governor. In my view, my inquiry was only as to how was the state police running and what was the attitude of the superintendent towards that goal and that mission. And very early on in the administration, I asked then Attorney General Dow to give me her evaluation of Superintendent Fuentes and how he was doing in the job. Very early on, she came back to me and said that she had complete confidence in him and that she felt that the men and women who worked under Colonel Fuentes had complete confidence in him. And so her recommendation to me was that there was no reason for a change. I would hope that whoever wins on Election Day would view this exactly the same way. As I said, I've had limited interactions with Pat personally over time. They've all been based on the substance of his job and my job intersecting, Superstorm Sandy and the Super Bowl. My impression of him in all those interactions has been outstanding. And then when Rick let me know that he was getting ready to move on and retire, I made inquiries throughout the state police about potential successors. I don't know, first, whether Pat, I never asked him when we met. I don't know whether he's registered to vote, if he is registered to vote, whether he's registered to a particular party, and if he is, which one it is. And I didn't ask him because I don't care. I don't care whether he's a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent. What I want him to be, and what I'm confident he will be, is an outstanding superintendent of the state police. It is not a job that we should be trying to make a political statement with. It is much, much too important to the people of this state and to the men and women who wear the uniform every day. And so I would hope that both gubernatorial candidates understand that you have a whole cabinet to populate where you can engage in some partisan choices and philosophical approach. That's fine, and you're completely entitled to do that. I've done it, and every governor who wins the election is entitled to do that. I don't believe that that's something that's appropriate with the state police, and I would say two things about that. One, that me, Corzine, Cody, whatever agreements or disagreements we had with Jim McGreevey, we didn't change it just because Rick Fuentes had originally been Jim McGreevey's choice. We made our judgments based upon Rick Fuentes' performance in the job. And I would caution folks, secondly, that if you look at the portraits on this wall, those folks who tried to turn this, including McGreevey at one point, this appointment into a political football, wound up losing. And so it's a very treacherous, dangerous thing to get into because the men and women of the state police don't want to be identified as Democrats or Republicans either. As Pat said, they want to be identified as Jersey troopers, and that's it. And I have never for a moment, whether it's been with the men and women in all the different divisions across or with the men and women who have served me in the Executive Protection Unit. I remember when I came in, someone asked me, do I want to get rid of all of the people who served on Governor Corzine's executive protection unit. And my response was like, well, did they all vote for him? And the person who was asking me, they said, well, I have no idea, sir. And I go, well, then what do I care? Like, as long as they're good and they're honest and they're going to protect me and my wife and my children, I don't care that they worked for Governor Corzine. That was their job. And I've never, ever made a decision as governor regarding my own protection unit or anything else in the state police with regard to politics. And so I know we're in an election year, and I know we're 3 weeks away from an election, but I am really urging both the candidates they can make their own evaluation of Pat, obviously. They have the right to do that, as I had the right to make my evaluation of Rick when I came in. But I urge them to look at history. Those on these walls who decided to try to turn the state police into a political football wound up getting tackled for a safety. It doesn't work. Make the decision based upon merit. That's the way I've made this decision in making Pat the new superintendent. And I trust that the next governor will do the same, because if they don't do it, they act at their own peril and the peril of the people of the state and the men and women who we're counting on every day all across our state who are wearing the uniform to keep us safe. So I look forward to a very long and distinguished tenure for Pat as the superintendent, in the same way that Colonel Fuentes has survived 4 governors. No mean feat, actually, but it's a testimony to his competence, to his integrity and his trustworthiness, and his loyalty to the state. And those are the things we should be evaluating these people on, nothing else. So I thank you all for coming today. I congratulate the Callahan family. This is a special day, I'm sure, for all of you, and it's a special day for me, because when you get the opportunity as governor to put someone who so clearly loves the job at the head of that job, that's a good day. So whatever else happens to me today, I hope not too many other bad things will happen that'll wipe this out, but I start with a big head start on a good day by starting today with this. So thank you all for being here, and I look forward to working with you, Pat. Major.
Thank you. You made a good choice.
I figured you would support your choice.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Which came true.